You're listening to the Real Estate Runway Podcast, powered by QUATTRO Capital, where we are all about alternative business and investment strategies to help you amplify life and maximize wealth. Here's your host, the recovering engineer turned multifamily investor, Chad Sutton.
All right, friends, we have Nick Prefontaine on the episode today. Nick has been through a life-altering situation way back when he had a snowboarding accident. And spoiler alert, he was told he'd never walk again. And what did he do? He ran out of the hospital and then dedicated his life to helping others through helping them get into rent-to-own properties where he also profits as an investor. We're going to go unpack all that. But before we do, if you get any value out of this show, folks, please leave us that 5-star review and thoughtful comment. That's how we get to more listeners just like you. So help a brother out, help other people out. Leave us that review. Go like us on YouTube. All those things are great. Check it out. We're actually on all the socials for the QUATTRO Capital company, Team QUATTRO Capital, one word, no special characters. And guess what? We're actually on TikTok now at Real Estate Runway Podcast. So check us out there as well as on YouTube at Real Estate Runway Podcast. If you want to apply to be on the show, visit us at thequattroway.com/podcast. We'd love to have you. And without further ado, let's get right into the episode, folks. All right. Real Estate Runway family, welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Runway Podcast. I'm your host, Chad Sutton. We are powered by QUATTRO Capital right behind me. I never know if I'm going to point in the right direction. But anyway, here we are in the mirror. So we have with us today Nick Prefontaine on the show. Nick has been so patient and been rescheduled a couple of times on this show, but we're finally here and we're going to do this up big today. So Nick, welcome to the show. How you doing, brother?
Super excited to be here, Chad.
So Nick, before we get into it, you have an amazing story, and I really want to hear a little bit about what made you into who you are today, some of the trials you went through before getting into the real estate world. So would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and walking that path with us so we can understand who Nick is and what you've overcome in life?
Sure. So it all goes back to a fateful day when I was only 14 years old. I was at ski club with my friends. And on the way to the mountain, I had really realized, because my friends and I brought all of our gear on the bus to get ready so we wouldn't miss a precious moment once we got to the mountain. So getting ready, I realized that I forgot one thing that day, and that was my helmet. I didn't think anything was going to happen. Nothing ever did happen, so I'd be all right. We got to the mountain and headed straight for the top. And on the show ride up, we noticed that it was very icy because it had been raining. So people were wiping out everywhere. However, Chad, it wasn't our first go around on the slopes. We knew what we were doing. So if anything, I think it excited me. I got to the top, buckled into my snowboard, and headed right towards the biggest jump in the terrain park with all my speed. And going out to that jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard, which threw me off balance. And that was the last thing that I remember. I was told that I landed on my head and I wasn't wearing a helmet. And the doctors told my parents that I probably wouldn't walk, talk, or eat again on my own. A few interesting things about the actual accident was that the only protection, because I didn't have a helmet on, was my goggles that I had on. And I wore some pretty big goggles, thick goggles at the time. And they really cushioned my blow. That was the only thing that was between me and my head and the mountain. And I was told that after the initial impact, with each subsequent hit, because I kept hitting my head as I rolled down the mountain, my goggles mysteriously moved to cushion each blow. Then when they wanted to life flight me, but they weren't able to because it was too windy. Out of the team of paramedics, there was only one who could intubate right on the spot, and I needed that to be able to breathe. And fortunately for me, he was one of the paramedics that showed up to the mountain that day. And then when I got to the hospital, this is the third thing that I always talk about. The doctors came in to share the prognosis and the news. And as I'm sure you and your listeners can imagine, at the beginning, it wasn't on the upswing. It wasn't more positive than more positive. It was, if anything, it was more negative and more negative. So each time they came in to share the not so good news, my parents stopped them. And they said, no, not in front of him, because they realized that even though I was out, even though I was in a coma and couldn't communicate with anyone, I was still taking in information. So they made the doctors step outside and share the information out there that, look, it's not looking good. He's probably not going to be able to walk, talk, or eat again. Then after a month, I was transported to a rehab hospital in Boston. And that's where I began my journey of having to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. And I had to learn how to do everything all over again. Literally, people don't realize this. Everything. Take a shower, take care of myself. It's not so glamorous, but go to the bathroom. I had to relearn all of that. It was like I was starting over, and I was a 14-year-old baby, I guess you could say. And then early on in my recovery, I heard my family and my parents talking that their goal was for me to make a full recovery. That was everyone. We were all shooting for that. And I heard in my head, Chad, that no, you're going to run out of the hospital. So that became our common goal, for me to run out of the hospital. And we had like weekly meetings to keep everyone pulling in the same direction and like status updates. And then fast forward, after I ran out of the hospital, it wasn't like my work was done. I had to continue to go to outpatient therapy for another 6 months, along with being tutored all summer long, 5 days a week, in order to continue into high school with the rest of my classmates. And looking back on it, it's a little surreal that only 18 months later, I was knocking on the doors of some distressed sellers that hadn't paid their mortgage in months, sometimes years. And that was my introduction to real estate. That was when I was 16, after I got my license. I couldn't drive with anyone, as you remember from first getting a license, but I could go and visit distressed sellers and knock on their door, and I left them a lead behind. But it was recently reflected to me from a mentor of mine that, wow, that was part of your recovery. And I never looked at it like that, because maybe you can relate to this, but when you're younger, time is compressed. Like 2 years or 18 months when you're a teenager feels like a lifetime. Now that I'm 34 years old, 2 years is a blink, but it seems like a lifetime when you're a teenager. So it just never occurred to me, but that was like part of my recovery, going door to door and helping people out of their unfortunate situation. And I'll take a breath there, because if you have any questions or anything.
So much that we just unpacked there. And man, I have to say, and I think everyone's listening to this, wow, he just glossed over the fact that the doctors were saying may not walk again, may not eat again, may not be able to fend for himself again. And you didn't just walk out of the hospital. You didn't go out in a wheelchair. You ran out of the hospital. That is a monumental achievement just in and of itself. And so I think two questions I have for you is, one, how did you feel in that moment? And then two, how in the world did that, because we skipped a jump there, how did that turn into, I'm going to go knock on doors and help people who are behind on their mortgage? Let's connect that for a second.
Yeah, I was trying to save some time, because I tend to be a little long-winded.
Like that, you deserve to be long-winded, friend. So let's get into it.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, after running out of the hospital, it's not like, all right, you're done, you can celebrate. I had to continue to go to outpatient therapy. But even beyond that, even past those 6 months, after the therapist cleared me, I went to a local physical therapist and got additional exercises that I could do to strengthen my shoulder and just continue to work on myself. Yeah, it was really definitely an unbelievable time. That's for sure. And then how I get into real estate, or why I got interested in that, I grew up in a family real estate business. So that's all I ever knew. When I was younger, when I was a wee little guy, I guess you could say, my dad was a builder, then he was a realtor, then he was an investor, and then some combination all throughout my life. So that's all I ever knew. I was on jobs with him at weekends, even before my accident, working on helping him with clean outs and cleaning up job sites and everything. Like, it's all I've ever known. So then around after running out of the hospital and after that work with building my strength back up in that outpatient therapy, I started to get interested in just some books that were on his shelf. And one of those books was Cash Flow Quadrant.
Oh, wow.
Now,
The classic. That's a good one.
yeah. No, and I think nowadays people, you always hear, oh, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It got me started. What is his more popular book? I'm sorry.
I think it is just Rich Dad, Poor
Rich
Dad.
Dad, Poor
That's
Dad.
the main
Yeah.
one.
Okay, that's the one that everyone always clings to, but that never caught my attention. What caught my attention was the Cash Flow Quadrant. And I know it's a little bit longer, but once I got into it, I couldn't put it down. And then after I put that aside, I approached my dad and said, how do I get started? Like, I want to help in the real estate bit, in your business, because he was an investor at the time. And around that time, they were playing with the idea of having a bird dog go and knock on doors. And I was like, this is my perfect introduction because I'm like just getting my license at the very beginning. So I was 16 and a half. And as soon as I got it, I got my list, houses that I had to hit. And I had my leave behind that I was leaving there. And I hit the road. And I had to go to school during the week, unfortunately, but because I knew I always wanted to work. I didn't want to pursue school beyond high school. So no one ever coached me or trained me on this, but I went to the website where you're supposed to look up these notice of default doors, the homeowners that have received that. And it didn't make sense to me to travel around these beautiful, nice areas where you could only hit maybe 5 or 10 in a whole day because they were so far apart. What made sense to me in my 16-year-old mind was I'm going to go to the area where I can hit the most amount of these doors in a day. So I went to cities, I'm trying to be nice here, but not so nice areas of cities, and where they were literally like right next door to each other so I could hit the most amount of doors in a day. And I think once I scaled up and got my script and got my feet under me, I hit anywhere from 50 to 70 doors in a day. I would usually do this on a weekend or a holiday because, like I said, I had to go to school during the week. But that's that gap that I left out.
That's pretty incredible, Nick. So let's progress into this a little bit. And so it sounds, and by the way, we have that in common. I also come from a long line of real estate investors that didn't know any better. I actually worked on them. I was actually swinging hammers as a kid. Had no idea my family owned them. I didn't find that out till later, but pretty funny stuff. So now let's get into that. And this is clearly an expertise that you've developed. And so is that still what you're doing today from an investment perspective? And let's go into that a little bit.
No, and that's actually, all right, so that's perfect the way that you phrase it, how I can like segue to what we're doing today. So my dad, this was all prior to 2008, the 2008 crash, or the 2008 debacle, as my dad likes to call it. Prior to that, he was buying and selling all of his homes using his personal credit. So I think we recently talked about it, and he said he actually only had 23 units at the time, but they were all signed personally. So literally I got my real estate license in, drum roll please, March of 2008.
Good timing.
Yeah, great timing. However, what it taught me, I got to learn, I didn't know any better. So all these older agents or more experienced agents were, oh my God, times aren't what they used to be. And I didn't know any better. So I was able to help buyers and help sellers in that environment. If you fast forward a little bit, my dad asked me hey, could I help him with the marketing of some of these properties? So I get excited. So before the crash, he was signing personally for all these investment properties. Then after the crash, I got to witness from 2008 to 2012, my dad and I worked in the same office. We were both doing different things. I was a realtor at the time, and he was doing some speaking for network marketing companies, for direct sale companies. And I got to witness, Chad, the creditors and the lenders calling him and hounding him every day. He would get in the office and he would deal with their calls, and they would harass him. And his response was, "Hey, it's not my fault that the market crashed because he personally guaranteed all these loans and all this debt." So then he actually made a decision that he was going to get back into real estate in 2013. And it started entering his mind. And he said, if I'm going to do it, there are going to be new rules and new guidelines behind what I'm doing here. So that's how our whole business developed. That's how our whole business started. And so we're buying and selling property now. It used to be only in our local market, but now it's with our associates all over the country. We're buying and selling them creatively. So with a lease option or a rent, we'll buy it on a rent to own. We'll close on it and buy it subject to someone's existing loan. If someone doesn't have any debt on the property, we can actually close on it and pay them a premium and make principal only payments. Those are just a few ways. However we are buying them, we are always selling them on a rent to own to our rent to own buyers. And there's only a small percentage of the market, roughly 20%, who can walk into a bank and get a loan today. So in that other 80%, they're not all good. However, there's a large portion of that 80% that make good incomes. They have great jobs and they have money saved for the down payment. They just can't, for whatever reason, walk into a bank and get a loan. So we're getting them into these homes with a down payment, of course. It does require a down payment, anywhere from 3 to 10%. Getting them during the process connected with credit enhancement. That's going to get back to us all and let us know how long it's going to be until they're mortgage ready. And then we're just making sure that we give them enough time with the lease to become mortgage ready. That's all. And there are a lot of investors out there, you can probably appreciate this, Chad, that will stick a buyer in a rent-to-own house with no plan to get them to the finish line and just say, yeah, if they fail or when they fail, I'll just do it again and collect another down payment from a buyer. We really believe in an altruistic, I guess you could call it, business model where we want them to succeed. And we're seeing a lot of our buyers succeed. Probably 80 to 90% of our buyers, we're seeing them get to the finish line and cross the finish line and get their own loan, which is pretty satisfying. And that's because of the process that we're putting them through and the pacing that we're putting them through, that we're going to treat them like they're a homeowner. The only difference is they don't have their end loan yet. Just one of the things. Their monthly payment doesn't go towards a down payment. It's just a rental payment. Just like basic things about our program. So again, I will take another breath and see if you have any questions.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so what you're really doing is it's a truly rent to own situation where you're not only providing a great rental property for these residents to live in, but also the coaching, basically what they need to get themselves purchase ready, which is where you then make a profit on the back end. So clarify for me, because I missed this part on the front end. How do you acquire the homes in the first place today? I think your dad didn't want to do it with personally guaranteed debt anymore. So how do you come across the property in the first place and then put these residents into it? Or do they already live there and you're helping them recover from being delinquent on their current mortgage?
Oh, no, that can't happen. No, definitely not. We're not buying homes with people that want to stay. No, that wouldn't work for anyone. How we're typically buying these homes or finding them rather, is homes that have had trouble selling on the open market, the conventional market with a realtor.
So aged listings, if you will, on the MLS type things.
Yeah, expires, withdrawals, that kind of thing. Just for example's sake, there are a number of creative reasons like a death of a family member, divorce, job relocation, that we acquire properties. Marketing is one of the other things, but generally speaking, it's homes that have had trouble selling on the open market.
Fantastic. And so what's the process to actually acquire that building? You find it, right? So you have the withdrawn or expired MLS listings, to use the terminology correctly. And then how do you go about acquiring them? Do you pull in investors to acquire them, use your own money, obtain temporary debt to do so on a non-recourse basis? Like, how do you actually acquire the property to then put the renter in and get them ready to rent to own, if you will?
Sure. All the deals that we do are done with little or nothing down. And you just have to ask people. And I know listeners and like the general public out there would say, who would ever do that? I would never do. But you're not in a situation where it would lend itself to. So you wouldn't be a candidate, but there are plenty of people out there that just don't want to deal with the house anymore. And we base every deal on the seller's situation. And we talk it through with them and we decide which solution best fits for them. There's a number of different ways you buy. As I mentioned, a rent-to-own agreement. We'll close on the property subject to, we'll buy with owner financing or some combination of the two. But it's all based on the seller's situation and how whatever solution fits them best.
Yeah, that's perfect. So really what you're saying is you go after a myriad of expired and withdrawn listings. You go after creative deal structures in that ideally you're minimizing capital on the front end, but then you are taking possession of that property. You're finding through probably some proprietary system or funnel, somehow you're finding a qualified or pre-qualified homeowner who can truly succeed in a rent-to-own situation, coaching them through that. And then ultimately you complete your investment when you sell that home to them on an option basis. And then you've both done a good thing and made a profit at the same time, doing good while doing well.
That was a good 10,000 foot view. You did a good recap on that. The reason it's an altruistic business model is, would we make a little bit more money if the buyer defaults? In a lot of cases, yes, because we put it on the market and be able to sell it at a higher price. However, if they just close and get their own loan, then everyone's happy. We're happy. We have a happy buyer that we just helped get into the home. They close, their name officially moves to title. Then we have a happy seller. They're happy. The house is out of their name. That's just on that small example, like a sandwich. We call it a sandwich lease option.
Yeah, I love that. And we have a saying here at Quattro, there's doing good and doing well. You don't have to do well at others' expense. You can do well while you're doing good, and doing good is helping those who may not quite be able to qualify for a conventional mortgage yet, but you put them in a situation where you're willing to sell them the deal and eventually they get there. So I think last question I have on this, Nick, but it's a big one. You obviously have to have a good, just like you have to have a lead list for the product you're buying, you have to somehow have a way to find and vet pre-qualified buyers who A, are interested in rent to own, B, you can coach to get to the point to where they're ready to get a conventional loan and also be a good resident. So that's a three-pronged person you're looking for. How do you find that person?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's actually what I've developed and what I've developed from doing these. And first it was, my dad asked me, can you help market all these properties that I'm getting on terms? And I was like reluctant at first, but I finally agreed to it that I would help him alongside being a realtor. And then I let my real estate license go in January 2016. It just didn't even make sense for me to keep it anymore because I was doing so well with him as an investor. And during that process of working over the years, we had a lot of buyer defaults, I guess, if you will. And that's because we didn't have any system to get these buyers to the finish line. So one of the things is through a lot of trial and error. I'm not saying we're perfect by any means. However, because of all our mistakes, we know what you have, the pacing that you have to put the buyer through, that you have to take a down payment. If you don't take a down payment, every time it has not worked for us, every single time. So we learned through trial and error, and now our associates that we coach to do this all over the country benefit from that system. It's the buyer process that we'd like to put all of our buyers through to make sure they get to the finish line. Now, does it work 100% of the time? No. And I'm not going to sit up here and pretend it does. However, barring a life event, we're seeing our buyers cash these out and walk into equity $60,000 to $80,000 on average. Because, yeah, we benefit, or we see it, that everyone benefits when they're able to close and get their own loans. So we'd like to leave a little bit of meat on the bone, if you will, and not inflate the price too high.
That's amazing. I love the model, Nick. Again, doing good while doing well. Friend, before we get out of here, I've got to ask you 4 Quattro questions to just get a little bit more into who you are as a person. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First one, what is your superpower and how does it benefit you in life or business?
So my superpower is the fact that, and this is actually the direction that I've gone in now, 100% with my speaking, my motivational speaking, and launching my company Common Goal, is to help people that are going through a trauma, life crisis, or tragedy, help them get through it, because that's the first thing that has to happen whenever someone's going through a trauma, is to get through it and then get through the other side. And that's where the limitless potential lies. So I think that's my superpower. I've always been unconsciously drawn to people that are in the midst of their own trauma. And whenever anyone's going through something, if anyone knows me, it's, oh, you got to talk to Nick. And now it's just, I don't know, I'm like brimming with excitement. I've created a business around that whole premise. And now I'm speaking and sharing my story with others who can benefit from my message.
I love that, Nick. And so let's go to the other side of the coin for a second. What's your biggest failure to date and what did you learn from it? Again, could be life or business.
Let me see. I always like to answer these questions in the way I see them. I don't look at anything as a failure. They're all learning experiences, because failure only happens if I stop. And because I keep going, I don't think I've ever experienced that.
Yeah, that's fair. And so basically you're saying, I don't fail, I learn. And you only fail if you stop. That's a great one. That's great. And the next question, you have a free gift for the audience. I'd love you to tell us about what that is and where we can find it.
Sure. So myself, my dad, and my brother-in-law are co-authors of the New Rules of Real Estate Investing, which is 24 leading experts, share their take and their niche, what they're doing. So for your listeners, I'd love to give that away. And when I say give away, we're going to mail them. We cover the shipping and everything. If they go to wickedsmartbooks.com/Chad, and we'll get the free book out to them. Like I said, we'll cover the shipping. We're not going to hit them up for shipping.
Yeah, folks. And as usual, just scroll down and whatever you're listening to this on, and this will be right in the show notes for your clicking pleasure. And last question, Nick, before we let you go, how do people reach out and get in touch with you? Should they want to just connect with you, talk more about your amazing story, or find a way you can help each other?
Sure. I can go a couple different directions on this. If they go to our website, smartrealestatecoach.com, they can get registered for the free master's class that we have. And I believe at last count, that was just 20 or 30 minutes. And it really lets them learn all about our trademark 3 payday system, and also how we buy and sell on terms. And then if there's anyone out there who's like going through a trauma or a life crisis or anything like that, they can go to my website, which is nickprefontaine.com/step. And there they can download the STEP system for free. And that's what I use to not only make a full recovery, but run out of the hospital. STEP is an acronym: support, trust, energy, and persistence. So in that ebook, I go into detail on each of those and how they can identify their support, trust, energy, and persistence and take the next step in their lives.
Very good, Nick. Thank you for coming on the show. This has been an incredible story, so motivating. I still can't believe you ran out of the hospital, man. That's just amazing. And then further, you devoted your life to investing in real estate in a way that does good for people while doing well for yourself and your family. So thank you for coming on the show. Look forward to having you next time.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Chad.
Wow, folks, I'm jazzed up after that one. That was an incredible episode, listening to Nick and his story and how he's dedicated his life to finding investment property where the sellers are in trouble, putting residents in there who are in a good rent to own path, coaching them, helping them qualify for a perm loan, and making money on the back end. Everybody wins. This is how we do good while doing well in the world, folks. So thanks for listening today. If you got any value out of this show, please leave us that 5-star review and thoughtful comment. That's how we reach more people just like you. So share the wealth, spread the wealth, leave us that review, and or like us on YouTube at Real Estate Runway Podcast. We're also on TikTok if you're into swiping things at Real Estate Runway Podcast. Sorry, I'm old. I don't do TikTok, but my team does. So check us out there. Love to see it. And all of our social medias are Team Quattro Capital, one word, no special characters for the Quattro team. Or just visit us at thequattroway.com. Click on any of those social media icons, and we'd love to see you there. Now, this has been another episode of the Real Estate Runway Podcast. Until next time, folks, over and out. See you then.
We hope this episode was insightful and brought value to your day. If so, please be awesome and leave us a 5-star review. Find out how Team Quattro can help you at thequattroway.com. Until next time, this is the Real Estate Runway Podcast.